Hi, my name is Steve Brown. I'm a certified rolfer, and about 4 years ago I took the class called Laser Assisted Rolfing with John Martin and Mark Hutton and Jerome Maruca, and guest star was Jeffrey Maitland, who was also there. So I want to tell you a little bit first how I decided to come to this class. And then what I did with that information and certain challenges that were presented to me during the class, and how I utilized all this information over the past 4 years into what has been an extremely diverse practice. So it just begins with a simple story that I was working on a woman's shoulder, and I was really doing some of my best work, and I found that I was able to get her 90% of the way there, almost totally fixed up, but there was that 10% piece that I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't get to. So I started to investigate. I started reading the writings of Don Hazen and Baral, specifically about neurogenic inflammation, and I figured out that that was it. That was the missing piece, that there was a nerve in her shoulder which was chronically inflamed, and this was the missing piece. So I started to investigate how could I deal with inflamed nerves, and so this, I forgot how I found out, probably from John Martin, this course using laser therapy and what John has been doing with laser therapy and inflamed nerves. So also I read Jeff Maitland's article on laser therapy. I think it's called The Too Good to Be True Machine. And you know, the basic, one of the basic ideas, you know, big ideas I find come from little questions, you know, and then, you know, the answers can get pretty detailed. But one of the things that I was hearing in Rolfing school was that physiology is the opposite side of structure, that what we do when we affect the outer structures, we affect the inner physiology. And I kept asking, how, and I never really got the answers that I wanted to hear. And so I was always looking to bridge that gap of the outer structure in the inner physiology and make them work more effectively together. And this is also another key reason how I got into laser therapy, because I saw laser therapy as a bridge between the structural work that I would do with my hands and the inner physiology, which was of course affected by what we do as rolfers with our hands, but the laser really affects the inner physiology, and so I was looking to bridge that gap. So I started to study physics books. And this book here, wonderful book called The Web of Life by Fritjof Capra, and early ideas in physics were really the forerunners of concepts of holism, which as rolfers we adhere to, and that's the basis of our practice. Also, the crossover between philosophy and physics, some of the early concepts called systems thinking were first theorized by Goth. I'm just reading here. He uses the term morphology for the study of biological form from a dynamic developmental point of view. He admired nature's moving order and conceived of form as a pattern of relationships within an organized whole, a conception that is at the forefront of contemporary systems thinking. Each creature, Goethe wrote, is but a patterned gradation of one great harmonious whole. And Kant writes, the philosopher Kant writes, we must think of each part as an organ, wrote Kant, that produces the other parts, so that each reciprocally produces the other. Because of this, the organism will be both organized and self-organizing. So we are a self-organizing something. Dr. Rolf, this is a statement which has been a little bit controversial in the Rolfian community, but I like it. She wrote, a human being is an energy pattern. A pattern, a set of waves, a set of energy fields that are created by God knows what, by the energy which is the basic energy of the universe. Who directs it? I don't know. What directs it? I don't know. The law directs it. The law as to how energies work together direct it. And I call that law God. And I say you can't mock God. You cannot try to get away from the laws of cause and effect. That is what the universe is about. And what you people are about, Rolfers, is watching what happens as you change this. And are you getting, as a result, something that works better? That's Dr. Rolf. Again, in Capra's book, he writes, I've come to believe that the key to a comprehensive theory of living systems lies in the synthesis of those two approaches, the study of pattern, or form, order, quality, and the study of structure, or substance, matter, quantity. The pattern of organization of any system, living or non-living, is the configuration of relationships among the system's components that determines the system's essential characteristics. The structure of a system is the physical embodiment of its pattern of organization. So again, some of these ideas that I just read to you made me very curious is how I could bridge the gap, or was there any gap? How could I most effectively affect structure and physiology? So henceforth, laser-assisted rolfing. So really based on these readings, and having never seen the laser, and also just out of the fact that I respect the opinions of my teachers and colleagues, such as, like I mentioned before, Don Hazen and John Martin and Mark Hutton and Jeff Maitland and Jan Sultan. All these people use the laser, so just based on that, I got on a plane from Israel, and having never seen the laser, I went off to Phoenix to go take a class, and I tell you, it was a little bit risky because all this added up to a lot of money. I bought the laser, the PL5, you can see behind me. I got the adjuster and the percussor. I made my money back many times over. Okay, so during the class, Mark Hutton, I came there with a lot of questions. I was really amped up and skeptical. And during the class, Mark Hutton gave us a challenge. He said, I want you to find new ways to explore this technology of laser therapy. You know, we're talking about laser-assisted rolfing, but what else can you come up with? So I took that really seriously. So that is, over the past 4 years, actually what I've done, and what I continue to do is to search for new ways to use this technology. So now I'm actually going to begin to tell you about some of the things in addition to laser-assisted rolfing that I've used laser therapy for. Of course, I use it again for the neurogenic inflammation, the nerve work, which was the primary reason why I bought it. I'll just tell you just a really quick story. Right after I got back from the laser class, I was sitting in Starbucks and with my laser, and I was studying and going over the notes, very enthusiastic. And I overheard a conversation at the next table. A guy had fallen down, and a big guy, he hurt his shoulder. And I was thinking to myself, should I go over? Should I? It'll be a little bit of a nerve. But I got up the nerve and I went over and I said, I'm sorry, don't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help hearing that you fell down and you hurt your shoulder, and I've got this, laser over there, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but if you want to come over and speak with me about it and how, I could perhaps help your shoulder using this technology, come on over. And I gave him my card and I went back. Well, the guy never came over and he looked a little bit embarrassed. But 2 weeks later, I got a phone call and he called up and came over and I treated him. And literally within a minute and a half, he was almost totally better. I did, some of the basic testing. I determined if he was testable, if he was switched. That's important to do. And then I determined that I think it was a dysfunction of supraspinatus. I lasered the myotome and the dermatome, after isolating what the problem was for about a minute and a half, and boom, the electricity turned back on, power was restored, and it was an important, essential, actually, component to getting this guy's shoulder better, because the nerve wasn't firing properly to that muscle. And so, of course, muscles are the primary stabilizers of joints, and if the joint's not stable, it predisposes that to injury. So very important to get the nerve working properly. And of course he continued with Rolfing, but I remember when it happened, the electricity went back on, and I like a dummy, I just scratched my head and I walked around the table. I said, they told me that this would happen, and here it did. So that was, really early experience. One of the ways to use it. Well, okay, when I got back to Israel, I started, using it in my practice, but I'll tell you a story of what happened. I wanted to go back to one of the patients that I had Rolfed without the laser, and I wanted to treat him with the laser, and I just did it, for free. I called him up and I said, I've got this new technology I'd like to use with you. And anyway, without going into all the details, I met somebody in the neighborhood who found out that there was going to be a laser study being conducted, and did I know anything about it? I said no, but I found out the guy's number who was running this program, and I called him up. I was interested. It turned out that the study actually was being sponsored by Erconia, and the chief medical researcher, whose name is Dr. Ryan Maloney, chief medical researcher of Erconia, and a chiropractor and another man who was sponsoring it, were coming over to Israel to do a study using laser therapy, the Erconia PL5, in relation to neurological disorders, specifically Parkinson's and MS, but not limited to. Well, it was really interesting to me and something that I hadn't thought of before. So I volunteered, and they were really happy to have me, and everybody flew over to Israel. It's just easier and more cost-effective to get testing done here than it is in the United States. That's why they did it here. Less red tape. And I joined the team, and all of a sudden I was lasering about 50 people a day. And It had nothing really to do with Rolfing at all. It was specific laser applications and frequencies to different areas of the brain for neurological disorders. And a formal test was written up at the end. And you know, all those guys went back to America, and there was a whole group of, I would say, about around 50 people that just became a part of my practice, because I was actually the only one who lived in Israel and the only one here with a laser. And fortunately for them and for me, because I had an instant practice right away, I became the laser practitioner. So over the years, I would say over the past 3 or close now to 4 years, I've been using laser therapy to treat neurological disorders such as, like I mentioned, Parkinson's and MS. Now, the basic idea is that in the case of neurological disorders, what we have are impaired neurons. They're not functioning properly. And what we've done with laser therapy is to stimulate those neurons so they can start self-regulating and functioning properly, to start to produce some of the chemicals and neurotransmitters that are either dysfunctional or not functioning properly enough. So some of the results, for example, with Parkinson's are improved cognition, more balance, fine motor control. Freezing is one of the issues in Parkinson's. They just start to walk and then they can't walk. And so the laser, through various applications, primarily to the cerebellum, has helped with many of those things. And in the case of MS, typically patients feel more balanced and more grounded, which is a great thing. All this culminated into all this experience culminated into the setting up of a center, a holistic center here in Jerusalem, again primarily for the treatment of neurological disorders. But I am not of the philosophy that the laser is the be-all and end-all. Again, I believe in holism and affecting the structure and the physiology. So Rolfing is an essential component to that. So with this center, for treating neurological disorders, we had Rolfing, of course, laser therapy to the brain. We had a naturopath. We had a psychologist on staff, because patient compliance is extremely important. Goal setting. They were prescribed physical therapy. We had a physical therapist. So when a patient would come into the center, they would receive manual therapy, laser therapy, psychological therapy, nutritional counseling, drinking water, which is a very important part, and specific exercise therapy, really designed for neurological disorders. So this was a center based on the ideas of holism, based on the ideas of structure and physiology. And the laser was a key component. And in this center, we not only had several PL5s, but base station, and my favorite was the Zorona, which I used all the time. But we wanted more hard data, not just experiential testimonials. So I had several meetings with heads of departments in major hospitals here, and as a result, right now, actually currently, there's a study being done with laser therapy and MS. So hopefully we're going to have some successful results there. There's also a study which has been written up, it's not the first one, concerning laser therapy and Parkinson's, and this has been approved already by the FDA. Not the study hasn't been done yet, but we've got approval to actually do the study. So that is being held up a little bit by funding. It's quite expensive, but this is a result actually of the challenge that Mark Hutton gave me of how can you use the laser therapy in new ways. So as a result, thank you, Mark, hundreds and hundreds of people have been treated. I've gained tremendous experience. I've named only a couple pathologies. I've treated every pathology under the sun, pre-op, post-op. I'll just go into that for a second. Many different types of surgeries. I've treated, again, post-op, and what I've heard time and again is the healing time has cut down in half. I've lasered many broken bones, cuts, burns, also scoliosis. I do a lot of scoliosis rolfing, but again, everything comes from the brain, and with scoliosis, the proprioception and balance can be very much a problem. So in rolfing school, of course, we learned how to do tracking, but I do laser assisted tracking, right? Because movement comes from the cerebellum. So I've developed many ways to do laser assisted movement and tracking, which is very effective. So something else which is very effective that I do often is laser-assisted muscle energy technique, primarily for lengthening tendons. I perform this technique actually using the percussor on the junction between the bone and the tendon, the muscle belly, where it's very rich in Golgi tendon bodies. And I apply the percussor at that place and the laser on the myotome and the dermatome, and then I perform the muscle energy technique, and really dramatic increases in range of motion. But ongoing, the direction I'm going now is brain systems regulation, nervous system regulation, the brain's ability to self-regulate between the various states of parasympathetic and sympathetic, and the neocortex and the amygdala. And so I've also studied trauma. I'm a somatic experiencing therapist. This is Peter Levine's work. So I said, why not laser-assisted SE? Many times when doing this work, this trauma work, so it's very body sensory oriented. So I would have, obviously couldn't do the laser and the SE therapy at the same time. So I would have one therapist doing the SE, and then I would be doing the laser. So they would feel a sensation, for example, in their hand, and I would laser the myotome and the dermatome, and had amazing, astounding results of trauma resolution as a result of that. The latest thing that I'm into now is the polyvagal theory, all about the vagus nerve by Stephen Porges. And so I'm going to see what direction that can go in as well, for overall integration, again, between the outer structure and the inner physiology, and the body and the brain. And anyway, I'm very grateful to all of you, first of all, for listening to me go on and on. And it's been an interesting past 4 years, and I want to thank also Mark Hutton and John Martin and Jerome Maruca and all the other guys that have been so influential. And enjoy the rest of your class. Bye. Greetings from Jerusalem.